We have learned how to make manual entries in the gradebook for assignments created, submitted, and graded outside Angel. Those assignments are called manual assignments. In this video, we will learn how to create electronic assignments that are created, submitted, and graded inside Angel. We will also learn how to connect these electronic assignments to Angel's gradebook. This video will focus on creating and configuring an electronic test in Angel. To add a test that students will take inside Angel and that you will grade inside Angel, click Add Content in the Lessons tab of your course. Under Create an Item, choose Assessment. Before you can add questions to your assessment, you have to configure it in this configuration window. You configure each one of these tabs beginning with the Content tab. Next to Title, give your test a name, and I suggest you use the word test in that name so that students know what it is when they see the link in Lessons. Next to Subtitle, you can give your students small bits of information like a deadline for this test. Under Page Text, you can give your students instructions that they will see before they click the Begin Now button to take this test. Those instructions will not display once they begin taking the test, so you want to consider what kind of instructions you want to give students. Here are some examples of some instructions that you might offer students, bearing in mind that they are visible only before they take the test. When you're finished configuring the Content tab, move to the Access tab. Under View Restrictions, Angel, by default, makes the test viewable by students. Make sure that Do Not Allow Users to View This Item is unchecked. You would place a check mark here only if you need to hide this test from students for a short period of time while you make changes to the test. You can limit your test by password protecting it or making it available to selected teams. Start and end date control the visibility of this test link in Lessons. In other words, students cannot see this test link before the start date or after the end date. You might want to consider the ramifications of using start and end dates, especially if you provide a review period for a test. This test is invisible to students before and after these dates. If you want to impose a deadline on your test so that students can't take it after a certain date, a better way to do that is in the Interaction tab. Under Delivery Settings, you have a Start Accepting Submissions date and a Stop Accepting Submissions date. If you put check marks next to these dates, students can see the test link in Lessons before and after these dates. However, they cannot open, see, or submit the test to you. So this might be a better option for imposing a deadline, since they cannot take this test after the Stop Accepting Submissions date, but they can see the link so that they can get feedback from you during a review period. Under Display Settings, you control how your test is delivered. To discourage cheating, I suggest you choose Question Set at a Time or Question at a Time. Under Question Set Defaults, you can further restrict this test. And to discourage cheating, I suggest you select Don't Allow Backtrack. You can make this selection only if you have the questions delivered question at a time or question set at a time. And these two options work very well together because after a student skips or answers a question, he cannot return to that question to change the answer. Under Submission Settings, you control how many times a student can take this test. You make your selection right here next to Attempts Allowed. Validation means, do you want to allow students to leave a question unanswered? And you have three choices. Allow but issue warning, allow students to leave a question unanswered but a pop-up message warns them that they are doing so. Allow without warning, allow students to skip a question, but Angel does not warn them that they are doing so. Do not allow forces students to answer a question before the next question is delivered. If you want students to be able to save their test and resume it later, you would put a check mark next to Show Save button. You would not do this, however, if you're going to limit their time under time settings. So let's deselect that. Never make submissions anonymous. If you don't know who is submitting a test, neither does Angel, and Angel cannot record any grades for a test that is submitted anonymously. Under time settings, you can limit the amount of time students have to take this test by clicking this button and inputting the number of minutes you want to give them. If you want to warn them that their time is almost up, you click this button and make your selection here. If you put a check mark next to Automatically Submit Assessment when time expires, when those 20 minutes are up, this test will automatically submit for grading whether or not the student has finished. When you're finished configuring the Interaction tab, you configure the Review tab if you want to give students a review. If you do not want to give them an online review, you would select Disabled. To configure a review, you complete the next 3 fields, and I suggest you make an online review as short as possible. And you do this by putting check marks next to Review Begins, Review Ends, and then completing these fields. A word of caution: if your test includes questions other than short answer and essay, you must provide an answer key, or students won't be able to see the correct answers. We're going to skip the Automate tab because that's a more advanced Angel function and go to the Assignment tab. The Assignment tab is critical because it's where you make the connection between this test and Angel's Gradebook. If you don't complete this tab correctly, number 1, grades for this test will not post automatically to the Gradebook. Number 2, the test may not display in the Gradebook. Number 3, students may not be able to see an accurate grade in the Gradebook. So it's critical that you configure this tab correctly. And for an electronic assignment like a test, a Dropbox, or a discussion forum, the only way to make that connection is right here in the Assignment tab of the Dropbox discussion forum or test. It's very easy to do. Next to Assignment, under Gradebook Settings, you click this drop-down menu and you choose New Assignment. Regardless of what you see in this drop-down menu, you choose New Assignment because you have not made the connection between this test and the Gradebook yet, so it's a new assignment to Angel. I suggest you leave this field next to title blank. If you fill it in, the Gradebook will display whatever title you place in this field, but it will display another title for this test in Lessons. You gave this test a name when you completed the Content tab. That name displays in Lessons. If you complete the title field, that name displays in Gradebook. So if you want the name of your test to be the same in Lessons as it is in Gradebook, leave this title field blank. Next to Category, choose one of the categories that you have already completed to put this test in. Let's put it in the Tests category. Remember that in a percentage-based gradebook, you must place all assignments in categories. If you haven't created your categories ahead of time, you can click Other, and in this window, you create the category by giving it a title and a weight based on what is in your syllabus, and you click Add. That will create the category and place this test in it. Points possible means how many points is this test worth. Calculation type is critical. If you allow only one submission of this test, first submission is a logical choice. However, if you allow multiple submissions of this test, you might want to select one of these other options. Never select manual. For assignments that are completed outside of Angel, like oral presentations and print tests, you must choose manual. Not for an electronic assignment like a test inside of Angel, a Dropbox, or a discussion forum. You cannot choose manual. Make one of these other selections. We'll choose first submission. Display format means how will Angel display this grade in Gradebook. I suggest you leave it at the course default, which you configured when you configured your Gradebook. I wouldn't hide the Gradebook assignment from students. I would go to the assignment hyperlink in the Gradebook and use a release date. When you're finished configuring your assignment tab, you save the settings for all of these tabs by clicking Save. And you're now ready to start adding questions to your test. This is your test canvas. By default, Angel creates one question set. A question set is a group of questions, and generally you will use only one. You might use multiple question sets if you want to group your questions according to the type of question or the topic of the question. You might also use question sets if some of your questions have different instructions or different settings from other questions. For simplicity, let's use one question set. And to add a question to that question set, you click here or here. When this window opens, you have two choices. You can create brand new questions for this test by selecting the type of question you want to create under Select Question Type, or under Select Questions from Other Sources, you can copy questions from a question bank in any course in which you're an editor. You can copy questions from any assessment in any course in which you're an editor, or you can copy and paste questions from a text document on your computer. Let's create our own questions under Select Question Type, and we'll start with a true-false question. The first thing you have to do is assign the number of points you want this question to be worth. And before you do that, you have to keep in mind that when you configured this test, you told Angel it was worth 100 points. So all of your questions together cannot exceed 100 points. So you have to have some idea of how many questions are going on this test and how much you want them to be worth. We'll make this question worth 10 points. You put your question text right here, and you have an HTML editor if you want to change the way that question looks. We'll click our HTML editor and keyboard our question text. Then we tell Angel whether the question is true or false, so Angel knows how to grade it. If you want to give students feedback, you put that feedback in these tabs. By default, Angel places a check mark next to Add to Question Bank. Make sure that check mark is there, or this question won't be added to your question bank. Then you have the option to save and return to the test canvas, or save and create new, which allows you to continue creating questions. Let's continue creating questions, and we'll choose a multiple choice question. Save and create new. By default, Angel assigns 10 points to this question because our first question was worth 10 points. But we can change this as long as our total points for the test don't exceed what we told Angel in the settings hyperlink this test was worth. We'll make this one worth 20 points. Keyboard our question text here, and we can click the HTML editor if we want to. We keyboard our answer choices down here. Then we tell Angel which answer is correct so Angel can grade this question. If we want to give individual feedback for each answer, correct and incorrect, we place a check mark here and our feedback windows open. If we prefer to give general feedback that applies to all incorrect answers and the correct answer, we would complete these tabs. When we're finished, we scroll down, make sure Add to Question Bank has a check mark next to it, and make our choice to continue adding questions or to save and return to the test canvas. Let's save and return to the test canvas. We can continue adding questions from here by selecting Add Question. We can delete this whole question set by clicking here, or we can delete individual questions by placing check marks next to them and then clicking Delete on the right-hand side of the screen. We can add a new question set by clicking here, or we can preview what we have so far. Last, we can configure this question set so that it has different settings or different instructions from the test as a whole. Let's click the Configure button. In the General tab, we can add instructions for this question set. On a one question set test, these instructions will be visible the whole time students are taking the test. If there are several question sets, these instructions will be visible only during the time students are answering questions in this question set. These instructions differ from the instructions that you configured in the Content tab in the Settings hyperlink. Remember, those instructions are visible to students only before they start taking the test, whereas these instructions are visible during the time they're answering questions in a question set. So you want to consider that if you decide to put instructions in this box. In the Interaction tab, you have the option of using different settings for this particular question set. You do that by deselecting Use Assessment Settings and choosing the settings that you want to apply only to this question set. This tab is not relevant to a test that has only one question set on it, because you'll by default use the settings that you established for the whole test. When you're finished, click Save. And now I want to show you how this test appears in the Gradebook. We'll click the Manage tab, Gradebook, Categories, and here are the 4 categories that we created ahead of time. And if you remember, when we looked at the Homework category, Show Tasks, View Assignments, we can see the oral presentation, which is a manual assignment that we placed in that category. Let's go back to Categories. Let's take a look at the Tests category. Show Tasks, View Assignments. There's our test. Our test is correctly connected to the gradebook, so when that test self-grades or when you grade it, it will automatically post its grade to the gradebook and students will be able to see it. Let's return to the gradebook. We want to click View All Grades so that we can see what the gradebook looks like now that we've added this test to the gradebook. You can now see test number 1, which we have added to the Tests category in Angel's Gradebook. Let's take a look at this test from a student's perspective. In Lessons, the student clicks the test link. These are the instructions that you provided when you configured the Content tab in the Settings hyperlink of the test. The student will see these instructions until he clicks Begin Now, and then he will no longer be able to see them. When he's ready to start the test, he clicks Begin Now. Continue. Notice that the instructions that you configured in the Configure tab for this particular question set appear here, and the student will be able to see them as long as he is answering questions in this question set. And because this test has only one question set, he will see these instructions until he completes the test. Notice that in the right-hand corner, he has a timer that counts down the time he has to take this test. Notice that there is only one question displaying because you configured this test to display one question at a time. After the student answers a question, he clicks Next. When the last question on the test appears, he answers it and clicks Submit, and the test will submit for grading.